Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by the amazing Freddy Nuti. Freddy, how you doing today?
Doing really great. I'm really excited to be on here, so thank you for having me.
Oh, dude, it's such an honor to have you on here, man. But before we talk about why you're here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. You are a film critic, podcaster, and filmmaker, as well as the co-host of Nightlight, a horror movie podcast which collaborates with the Bloody Disgusting podcasting network. And you are the owner of Choice Cut Media. So let's start off with Nightlight. You guys have been doing a podcast for a long time. Nightlight has been a very successful podcast for a very long time. What got you started with the podcast?
Thank you. I really appreciate those kind words. Yeah, we it's really funny. We've been podcasting roughly for about 7 years, but the first 2 years it was a different podcast called the Good Night Podcast, where we used to do like movie reviews, movie trailers, just talk about the movie news and stuff like that, and even talked about gaming back in the day too, which was a very interesting time period. But 2 years later on, we had a new podcast in mind about talking about horror films, which me and my other co-host, which is Prince Jackson, we both love horror so much. And we kind of know that he's the big horror guy, had a background in horror, grew up with horror. I was more like just the regular movie guy who likes to talk about like deep dives and talking about like breaking down scenes and stuff like that. So that's why he brought me on. And we just celebrated our 5 year anniversary this October, which has been great. And it's kind of like crazy to think about. And it's really fun that we have a good transition with this because the movie that we're going to talk about a little bit later is that we just recorded our episode on The Conjuring yesterday, which actually we covered 5 years ago too. So we're revisiting the movies that we first did the podcast with. So yeah, 5 years in the making. Bloody Disgusting has been an absolute great company to be part of. It feels like a little small family with all the different podcasts that's part of that network. Yeah, no, that's obviously Nightlight for me is our little baby. And it's something that we love talking about, like horror and celebrating horror films. And even if there's a film that's not for us, we'll say it's not for us. And we'll
Right.
actually still say, like, it could be for someone else. We always still want to celebrate all of the different horror films out there. So that's our main stick, I guess.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't care if a film's not for me. I hope there's an audience for it. I would never
Yeah.
want somebody to create art that doesn't get loved. Like, that's a very sad thing. So even if there's a movie not for us, I will try my best to put as positive of a spin on it as I possibly can. So, and I love Prince. We were able to have Prince on the show too. Prince is great. Love Prince to death. And it's about time we made this happen with us. So, and not only that, but we talk about Choice Cut Media. What can you tell us a little bit about Choice Cut?
Yeah, Choice Cut Media has been a passion project for such a long time. And there's obviously moments where like I'll like leave it behind a little bit, come back to it and stuff like that too. But ever since I was in high school, I've always had some type of website to show like movie reviews and stuff like that as well.
Mhm.
And then it kind of got lost. It was like a lost project. And then for so many people, and I was listening to a lot of shows that you've made with guests, same thing happened. Pandemic hit. We were all stuck at home and a little movie called Host came out where it was so good. I fucking love that movie so much. Oh my God, you're wearing the shirt. That's incredible. Uh
I
it's
am a
so
huge,
oh
huge fan of
man.
this movie as well, man.
So seeing that movie really sparked the creativity back in my mind. It's like, hey, if all these friends can come together and make a film during these trial times, what's stopping me from doing what I love to do? So that kind of
Right.
revamped me to like restart up the website, started doing different like little web pages, which kind of grew into doing more festival coverage. And then I was able to do, I think, I forget what it was called. The Berlin Film Festival was the first film festival I've ever done because everything was virtual at the time. And then
Okay.
it went to going to in-person film festivals like South by Southwest, which opened a whole different door for me. And I just love being around a community that just loves film and going into these horror movie premieres and kind of meeting some celebrities that are like in the movies I was like looked up to. So Choice Cut Media is something I'm really proud of because it's kind of like my own thing besides like the
Yeah.
podcast and everything else. It's where it's kind of like my little escape. So like when I just want to, just write up a review when I have time, I'll do that. Or I use it really as a platform for film festival coverage, and that's where I can put my content out there and stuff like that too. But also I love doing interviews to just learning the behind the scenes of how how much work it
Oh
does
yeah.
take to make a movie always makes me so happy to learn about and kind of appreciate the work that people put out there. So that's Choice Cut Media for me.
Making a movie's hard, man. Like
Absolutely.
anybody that's done it knows it is fucking hard work from top to bottom. So, but the good thing is, guys, you don't have to go far to become a part of Freddy's life because I have all the links for Nightlight Podcast, all his social media links, and the links for Choice Cut all down in the description. So make sure you're following, make sure you're subscribing, giving it 5 stars, make sure you're writing positive reviews. It helps to push all these podcasts out into that tricky algorithm we all try so hard to crack. So, in order for you to have such a, and like I said, you guys are tied with Bloody Disgusting, which is kind of the cream of the crop when it comes to podcasting networks and stuff like that. But in order for you to become a part of something like that, horror had to start for you somewhere. So now, Freddie, I would like to go back to the past and talk about what got you
Yes.
started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Freddie, the first horror movie you watched was
So I kind of cheated with this one a little bit because it's probably not the first horror film I watched, but this is the one that was the most pivotal for me within the horror community, which was The Conjuring in 2010, directed by James Wan. Yeah, I absolutely love that film. Being able to rewatch it again earlier this week was a phenomenal experience. And I will be blunt, I don't know if it's a hot take because I feel like a lot of people will agree with me. It is still one of the scariest movies ever made. And I'm going to hold on to that as much as possible because I feel like some people will agree with me, some people won't, and that's okay. We all have our own personal takes. But just rewatching that movie and seeing scene after scene after scene of just banger after banger after banger, like scare tactics and how they do tension and how they do dread and just showcase what is scary is phenomenal in that film. So for me,
right.
The Conjuring was my first horror film that kind of like sparked everything else afterwards.
And again, like you said, very terrifying to this day. It's that movie that, while it's not my personal favorite in that franchise, that and Insidious kind of came at the same time and kind of really revitalized that haunted house type of horror film. So, do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
So I saw it in theaters when it first came out, which was like, okay, 2010. So I was probably maybe 19 years old. And at the time, I was already a film fanatic. I just love the filmmaking process. I love how films tell really important stories and voices to be heard. But I was never really in love with the horror genre yet. But The Conjuring for me was the first movie in the horror sphere that was so like well crafted, well made, where I'm just like, oh my God, these shots are very beautiful. There's long continuous shots. The way he moves the camera, the way he zooms in when he has to zoom in on something a little bit more scary and more prolific and like the close-up shots of the faces. I'm just like, oh, horror films can be well made. And I hate that I had that aspect when I was watching this movie because obviously there's so many movies that came before it that also are beautifully made. But as someone who loves film, that was the first time I saw a horror film well crafted and well edited and well shot and well acted and just seeing it all come together. I'm just like, damn, I should look at more horror films. I should see what it's capable of. And then it became my favorite genre. And now I'm just down the rabbit hole of as many horror films I can watch, I will watch. So yeah,
And that's how it should be. I mean,
exactly.
growing up a huge horror fan, it's something that's meant a lot to me for a very long time. And we know you saw this in the cinema for the first time. Do you remember which scene it was that affected you the most?
There's a few. I think one of the things for me as someone who loves film, the easiest thing I can always talk about is the continuous shot of when the kid is unloading from the car, and then the camera just follows behind her, and it goes like under the couch, through the house, and then like starts moving to different characters and stuff like that too. So that scene, beautifully shot, well edited, got the beautiful soundtrack in the back as well. Great sound music that they chose for the movie and the time period and the aesthetic and its look. But for me, for the horror aspect, I think the hide and clap is something that's always going to be iconic for me. And there's multiple scenes in the movie that have that concept in there and it kind of like builds upon it as well of what hide and clap does. But it's something that really stuck with me of how to build tension and how to build fear in a fun, childlike way. And like, how do you twist that into something more sinister and more dreadful And I think it's still effective to this day. Like rewatching those scenes, I'm just like, this is terrifying. Being blindfolded and following a random clap, and you think it's like your daughter, but it's not. Your daughter's in a completely different room. And then obviously the one that happens in the stairwell, like towards the basement,
Wanna play hide and clap?
beautiful as well. So like that scene will always be embedded in my mind as one of the best horror scenes of our generation, I guess. But no, without a doubt, that scene, it haunts me still to this day.
Mhm. See, for me, the one that really got me was the
Look what you made me do!
Oh, it's so good. The execution where it just kind of like builds and she gets a little louder and a little louder and then she yells it and comes out of like a misdirection. It's like, oh, she was right there. Now she's to the
yes.
side. Like I would have to say, The Conjuring, although it's like it feels like it's set piece after set piece after set piece, each set piece brings in the horror and it executes it so well. Where it's like there's no miss, in my opinion. I feel
Right.
like they don't like there's not one scene that doesn't work well.
Right, and I agree with you there. I think that the scene, the whole movie has that aspect. Even when you get Bathsheba down in the when you finally get that transformation and full on,
Mm.
that's terrifying.
Yeah, I feel like the movie is just filled with iconic moments. Even like when they're doing like the laundry outside and the sheet like hits the person, you see the outline of the person, then goes to the window, and then Bathsheba's like up there as well. Another iconic scene. But exactly what you were talking about too, having that sheet over her head, and then you can peer and look at her eye, and the eye like special effects, super well crafted, super well done, and the blood splatter that goes onto the white sheet, it just adds such great effects.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about this movie, for the most part, it uses a lot of practical effects, and that will always stand the test of time. Like you can watch this movie 20 years from now and still be impressed for what they were able to do because it looks so realistic, it looks so real. And
Right.
shout out to like the whole family and the kids and seeing a little young Joey King in this movie too, who just absolutely shines. Everyone brings their A game. And I guess another scene I would love to bring up too is the scene where one of the girls gets dragged across the room and being able to see the behind the scenes of how that movie was made and how that scene was crafted. It's so beautiful to see how much work it's done for a scene that happens for like 20 seconds. But it stays with you. It shows that like this paranormal activity goes hard from the start of the movie. It has like its little like start off, but like I've seen after scene, it's like, damn, these are the scenes that we would see in other horror films in the third act. But this movie is just
Right.
delivering these scenes back to back to back to back with some comedic elements into it in between and some wholesome moments within the family and the Warrens. And I know there's a lot of controversy of like the real Warrens and stuff like that too, but the movie does such a good job that you're rooting for all of these characters as well. So when things do happen, you care about the people who are involved, which is a very good aspect of this.
Mhm.
Really great storytelling.
It's hard to love a horror movie if you don't give a shit about the characters.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you don't give a shit who lives and who dies, it's very hard for you to actually care about the film in general because if they're living or they're dying, I don't care. Get them out of
Yeah.
here. Give me the meat bags. And this movie, you're right, has no meat bags. Even the side characters, the other investigators that are with Lorraine
Yeah.
and you with Ed and Lorraine, you really feel for them too. You know that you
100%.
they're great characters. You really care about them, and The Conjuring is a part of a big franchise now. It has its own universe. We have the
Yes.
Conjuring universe. Which film in the Conjuring universe would you say is your favorite?
I mean, I hate to say it's The Conjuring, but it probably is. I think it's just because it like set the stage for so much stuff on here as well. But they also created a lot of iconic characters, and that's what we kind of broke down in our podcast is that this set the stage for Annabelle being one of the most iconic doll-like things. And there's even a little back and forth between Annabelle and Chucky pretending that they were dating. And so it's like it's really funny to see the horror community kind of do little creative things like this too. And like
Love
Megan,
it.
there's all these like iconic characters, but you get Annabelle, but also spawns off one of like the most scary villains out there, which was like the nun. And just seeing Bonnie Aarons do her thing as that character is always iconic to see. And she does such a tremendous job in a lot of different movies. And a lot of people don't know she plays a lot of these characters too. But the big thing with James Wan, he created three major franchises. He did the whole Saw series, Insidious, and The Conjuring. So just knowing that this guy has been able to create something so crazy huge within like the horror community, is always cool to see. And I will be a diehard fan. It's not part of the Conjuring universe, but if this was somehow connected, Malignant is the best movie out of
Yes.
everything. It's a masterpiece. I don't care what people say. It is the best movie ever created, because he just goes, does what he wants to do, and kind of tells his own story, and it's unique and it's different. It's not an IP, but ah man, I love Malignant, so I could talk about Malignant all day long too. But
It's a fantastic film.
yes,
Um,
yes, it doesn't
very,
take
very
itself
big fan.
seriously and on purpose. It's purposely
Right.
done. Yeah.
So we talk about, The Conjuring and what that movie means to you. But here for a second, Freddie, my little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Freddie?
I
What
love
is your
that.
favorite horror movie of all time?
So it fluctuates. I feel like it always changes every time someone asks me this question. The two movies that are always on top though will be The Thing, um, and Alien. But I'm gonna lean towards Alien first because I think Alien is gonna be the movie that it will be always iconic for me. It was always one of those movies that was also well crafted. Ridley Scott does something magical with that film. I love how that franchise kind of continues and the world building that's included in it as well. I'm
Mhm.
obviously a huge Prometheus fan. I know that's also a hot take, but I think that movie is masterful too. But I will have to say Alien probably is my favorite movie of all time.
What do you think of Romulus?
I liked it. I think it has a nice blend of what they were doing with Prometheus and the original Alien, a little bit more contained, which is great too to see that they're kind of going back to the basics, but also a straight continuation of the first movie too, which I love to
Sure.
see as of it's a very fan service film where I feel like it doesn't hold itself up by itself. It kind of holds on to the nostalgic factor of what happened before, so as a standalone film, it's not really its own thing, but at the same time, it does progress the story. It has a lot of great scares, phenomenal acting as well. I liked a lot of the elements that they brought from the first movie back to this movie, but I feel like it kind of overstayed its welcome a little bit with one of the characters they bring back. But I love that the whole
Yeah.
family was behind it and kind of like we're happy to bring up that character again. And I don't want to spoil anything that people haven't seen yet, but Alien Romulus does rip really hard towards the third act as well. I like the choices that they made. I love what's possible in the future too. They already talked about a sequel coming up
Yep.
soon with the same characters who do survive towards the end. We get a great android character in this movie as well, and I can't wait to see what they do with that character later on. Because
Team Andy,
man,
baby.
so good.
Yeah.
Haley Spaney had quite the year this year as well. So it's gonna be really cool to see what happens next. I don't know if they talked about if Fede Alvarez will be a part of the sequel, but I hope he comes back as the director too, because I love his work. Like Don't Breathe is phenomenal. The Evil Dead remake was one of those pinnacle movies that got me into horror as well, and just kind of testing my limits of like what I was able to handle back in the day. No, I love that Alien Romulus. I think it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Me too. We were big fans. So um man, I've had an amazing time with you talking about your first horror movie and your favorite horror movie, Freddie. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. And I think I know the answer to this one, but my script tells me I gotta ask. We're gonna go back to The Conjuring. And what we're gonna do, Freddie, is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking it on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All we're
Hmm.
doing is ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So, zero skulls being not effective, five being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Freddie, what would your ranking of The Conjuring be?
I'm breaking the meter, six skulls. But to play fair, five skulls, without a doubt,
Right.
five skulls out of five. That movie definitely made me fall in love with the horror genre, and that's basically my whole life now. So if it wasn't for that movie, I wouldn't be doing the things I'm doing today.
Exactly.
So the inspiration and the big effect that it had on me, I can't thank that movie enough. I'm always gonna be like a James Wan fan out of that as well. Maybe I'm a little skewed now with his work, where it's like I just love everything he does. He's brilliant.
Right.
But 5 out of 5 skulls for The Conjuring. And still rewatching it like last week really solidified that as like, yeah, you're still great. You're still one of the pinnacle movies for the horror genre. So yeah,
Hands
5 out of 5. Easily.
And completely agree with you. This movie is still so important and so impactful and so scary still to this
Yeah.
day. So I know I said it at the beginning, guys, but we're at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, I have, again, all of Freddy's social media links and podcast links down in the description. So make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're going and doing all your due diligence. Not for me, not for Freddy, not for Prince, for yourself. Because I promise you, you are not going to regret it once you start checking out the podcast. You're going to want to deep dive all the way back into all their old episodes as well. So please make sure you're doing that. Freddy, please don't go anywhere, my friend. I got a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. It does help build the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.